Okay, of all the points in my 6-point planning map, if you like, the crisis is the most important part. Even if I've come up with a duff idea for a story because I'm under pressure, starting with a crisis is going to save me. Let's see how it works. Chloe stabbed furiously at the keypad, swearing under her breath, and then her eyes pleaded with me. "They've changed the code," she spat. Disbelief. I closed my eyes, searching for the most likely change. The most powerful company in the world, Futures, holds the DNA of everyone on the planet. Double Helix was this morning's code. I opened my eyes again as it came to me. He'd rhyme it. Felix. Happiness. Futures actually thought they were making the world a better place, like all dictatorships. Try Felix. Right, starting in straight with the crisis forces me to be dramatic. Look at my choice of verbs. Chloe stabbed, she's swearing, she's pleading with me. Automatically, the reader is emotionally involved. More than that, they have to try and work out what on earth is going on. But there are lots of clues. There's a keypad and a code, so they know they're in a kind of technology genre, possibly a thriller because this code is trying to be cracked. They know there are two main characters. There's Chloe and there's me, the narrator. They know that they're in a near future because they've never heard of this company, Futures, but it's the most powerful company in the world. It's a world like ours. It's involved with the DNA, so the future isn't too far-fetched. It might only be 5 or 10 years away from where we are now. And they know again that it's got a science sort of theme because double helix links with DNA. So, lots of clues for the readers to work out what's going on. Well, what kind of world is it? It's probably one where this company, Futures, is trying to take over because I, as the author, have referred to it as a dictatorship. So this is a really useful technique. I grabbed the reader here with the beginning of my crisis, and then I put in a bit of backstory, or as writers call it, exposition, where I give a little bit of detail about the setting and what's happened previously. We know what this company has done, and we know why they're there. They're trying to break a code. And all that is done in very few words. There are not many words on this page, and it's accomplished an awful lot. Chloe dared to breathe again. The door slid open silently, and we entered into a sea of white. Our eyes locked on each other. 5 minutes, I said stupidly. We both knew the plan and the timings intimately. 4 years we'd worked here, brains whirring at optimum from weekly doses of Z, the drug configured individually to our own brains, courtesy of Futures. Forgetting became impossible, which made us incredible employees, but a brain that can't forget wakes up every day with pain. Your father's death from cancer, the betrayal of your first love, the pain of childbirth, replayed every morning. And worse, memories you've wiped. The first time you slept alone as a baby, your first toothache, the first time your parents were caught in a lie, finding out your cat was dead. Slight, inconsequential, meaningless to you, now suddenly real, and always repeating. Futures, your future poisoned by your past. Right, well, describing the crisis in this way allows me to give the characters thoughts, and that's always something that writers under pressure in an exam usually fail to do. And the thoughts are doing two things. They're telling me how the character's feeling, this idea of the pain that they're having to suffer, but look at the exposition it's doing. It's giving that whole backstory of what Futures has been up to, and it's given my characters a motive for wanting to attack the company. So the company have been feeding them this drug Z, which has incredibly improved their memories, but the side effects of that is these awful memories never go away. We can never delete them. We can never wipe them from our minds. What a horrible future that would be if you couldn't forget things, or at least forget how bad they were. And then the other thing it's allowed me to do is show you how long my characters have got. this is going to be a 5-minute story. So the action is going to take place over about 5 minutes, which means I know I can fit it all into 2 pages. The extra events are the backstory, as I've suggested, which are intertwined with the emotions of my characters. So I know I'm gripping my reader, I'm gripping the examiner, and also it's an exam, I'm gripping myself. I'm not making it a boring writing experience. I'm having fun with it myself and enjoying what I'm doing. And that's important. Just because you're writing an exam doesn't mean you shouldn't seek your own pleasure. After all, if the story is going to fascinate you, it's likely to fascinate another reader. But we had not predicted this, the bare white room. So this is when you introduce the crisis further. You go into more depth, either the same crisis or a new one. Because it's a 2-page story, it's worth exploring greater depth to the same crisis. Where is it, Johnny? We needed the mainframe, but the room was empty. Our research was faultless. 4 years of living with perfection, working through the ranks. My twin and I had persevered. Last night, it had all been worth it. We'd found the back door to the firewall. Chloe had found it by accident. Mr. Hope, chief executive of Futures, had been trapped in a lift with Chloe. It had been a sudden power cut. The processing of DNA for 7 billion people needs a lot of computing power. While you sleep, Futures virus taps into your computer, your tablet, your mobile phone. You can't count the processing power or the wattage required, and last night's resulted in a power cut. So starting with the crisis has allowed me to just focus on 3 key characters. I've got my villain here, Mr. Hope, who represents the whole company. I'm not going to introduce lots of other characters, that would be pointless. Too many for the 2 pages. So I've just got my 2 characters on the side of good, Johnny and Chloe, and Mr. Hope, the villain. Again, in the midst of the crisis, notice how each paragraph starts with a crisis. I can then give that backstory, that exposition, to work out why they're there and what the problem is with using this password. What the problem is with the company. So the company isn't just attacking our 2 employees with this drug Z, it's also affecting everyone. There's no privacy. It's using anything that can go online and possibly using it against you. Right, let's read on. Mr. Hope and Chloe alone in a stalled lift. I've put that in a single paragraph because it's going to be crucial to my story. I don't know how crucial it's going to be yet because I haven't ended it, and I'll explain that in a minute. He'd pressed his palm to the scanner as a reflex, without thinking, and began to speak. Butter, and then he'd stopped. Nothing happened, of course, because Mr. Hope had caught Chloe's eye in the mirror. She had shrugged. He had shrugged. 2 employees trapped in a lift. No big deal. But it was a big deal. Mr. Hope had a daughter, Faith, and she had a horse, Butterscotch. The password to the mainframe. Now, all we had to do was find it, and it wasn't here. Okay, well, this is my new crisis. Yeah, they had the crisis of not being able to get the code, then that was resolved, and now I've got a new crisis. They've got the code for the mainframe, it's Butterscotch, but there's no mainframe. They've broken into the room where they're sure it exists, and it's disappeared. So I've got 2 choices now as a writer. They're going to find a way to get it to appear, get Butterscotch into the mainframe so they can alter what Futures does. They can introduce their own virus and stop all this information gathering, all this interfering with DNA. So it can end triumphantly with them destroying the company and saving mankind from having DNA available just to the company. They could reveal everybody's DNA straight onto the internet, so no one would have control over it. Okay, so that's one ending. But the other ending could be that Mr. Hope has stage managed this trip in the elevator with Chloe. He knows what Chloe and Johnny are up to, and this is a trap. They're going to do something which he needs them to do, which will in fact infect everybody. Do you remember I said they were twins? So they could have been a genetic DNA experiment set up by Mr. Hope's company when they were young. They knew nothing about it. He's going to reproduce their DNA via the internet, and that's going to dramatically alter the DNA of billions of people so that they become perfect copies, replicas of these two villains who don't know it, but they become the norm. So I've got these two different ways of ending. One's a utopian one, where Chloe and Johnny save the world, and one's a dystopian one where they think they're going to save the world, but they're exploited by Mr. Hope so that everyone shares their memory, the computing power of their brain, so everyone becomes much more intelligent, but also filled with this kind of pain that Johnny and Chloe have felt. And I can do either of those. Now, why that's important is I didn't plan that ending, either of those endings. I had no idea that either of those endings were possible until partway through my writing. And the thing that helped me do that was my crisis. If I'd started with the story of Futures and Mr. Hope and then becoming a powerful company, I would have been too worried about explaining all the detail, and I'd never have worked out where my ending was going to go. But starting in a crisis kind of puts me as a writer into a state of panic, and it's helpful panic because I'm writing about my character's panic, and as I'm doing that, I'm thinking about the likely scenarios about how I'm going to end. So here's a story that's, it's about 440 odd words so far. In 2 pages, I'm going to write about 600. And so I know I've got another 150 words to end it, which I can easily do. And I've got options, what will the examiner have? More utopian stories where things turn out well, or more dystopian stories where they turn out worse? Sadly, I haven't read 1,000 short stories, I don't know. But probably, for my money, I'll go dystopian. And that's where I would head under pressure in the exam, because it allows me to introduce a further twist. We think they've succeeded, but their success actually results in tragedy. Right, well, let's recap on some of the advantages of starting with the crisis. It allowed me to include exposition, this idea of the backstory. I hope you noticed my sentence starters, that they were incredibly varied, different. Nearly every sentence started in a different way. It allowed me to cheat with some sentence starters for effect. I started a few with and but. You will have noticed some incredibly short paragraphs where I was playing about with tension. Hopefully you also noticed that in the longer sections I was able to show off linking ideas with colons and semicolons and dashes. Not just because I know the examiner's looking for these, but because they allow me to write in contrast to my short tense paragraphs. So these two counterpoint each other. Short paragraphs to create tension, and then these longer detailed ones to give that backstory again, the exposition. And hopefully you'll remember that linked to the exposition, I'm always giving the characters' feelings. And by doing that, by giving their feelings, I'm constantly asking the reader to engage with my story. And finally, what does all that do? It all comes together to give me this choice about how I end. And choice is the key ingredient that keeps me interested as a reader. Wow, that's messy, isn't it? But I hope it's been a helpful video, and why not write your own story under exam conditions now and see how it works?